Laser sights will make you a more accurate and confident shooter by providing visual feedback on sight alignment and trigger control. Crimson Trace, making laser sights standard equipment. Learn more at crimsontrace.com.
Tom Gresham here. I am so glad that you guys are here. Gun Talk, of course. We're going to be talking about, well, as I say, there are new guns out there. I told you last week we're going to be talking about some new guns. Some of them have been announced. More will be announced next week. We'll be talking about a lot of that. We have, we have a new Supreme Court justice. What's that going to mean for gun rights? We're definitely going to get into that. New justice, new balance on the Supreme Court. Well, I could speculate, but we're going to have people on here who actually know what they're doing. We're also going to be talking about, should you get into hand loading, reloading, if you will, making your own ammunition? There was a time when that was the only way you were going to get good ammo, honestly. If you wanted better ammo, you had to hand load. Is there a reason to do that anymore? Well, a lot of people think there still is, and we'll talk about that as well. But, of course, as always, we're going to be talking about the things that you would like to talk about. And to do that, you just give me a call, 866-TALK-GUN, or just dial me at Tom Talk Gun. That'll get you in. Now, here's a story that'll give you the willies. Out of Maryland, Maryland police, District Heights, Maryland. 2 Maryland police officers were shot while serving a drug-related search warrant at the wrong apartment. Short version of this is the police get a tip from an informant, and boy, we have heard this time and time again. It's the kind of stuff that'll make you stay up at night worrying. Somebody gives them the wrong address, or they go to the wrong address, whatever, and the police are kicking in the door. They're bashing in the door. The guy inside is not the one they're looking for. He's just a good guy. He's a good guy, oh yeah, and he has a gun. And so what does he do? He shoots the people who are breaking in his door. Natural, logical, sensible, legal. He shoots 2 police officers. Normally, what has happened in the past is the police officer ended up shooting him and killing him. They end up killing the good guy who was trying to defend himself and his family. In this case, the police went, as soon as this guy realized it was the police, he put down his gun, put his hands up, and was hollering, "Don't shoot me, don't shoot my daughter." And the police owned up. They said, "Hey, we screwed up. This guy was doing it right. He had a right to do this," which is frankly unusual. I am delighted. By the way, the officers were shot with a shotgun in the hand, but I think they're going to be fine. Nobody got killed. Nobody got seriously injured. But food for thought for you. The bad guys, particularly home invasion folks, really bad folks, they're coming in teams now dressed as police officers and yelling police. Kicking in the door and yelling police. And then they tie up the inhabitants, the residents, rape the women, might harm or kill the men, and steal what they can. Of course, the idea is the reason that they would come in dressed as police, with those jackets that say police, and yelling police, is so no one shoots them. Now, this is a horrible situation, and the options, none of them are real good here. You're in your house, minding your own business. You're not a drug dealer. You're not a bad guy. You're not expecting the police to kick in your door. And somebody is pounding on your door, and then it gets broken in, and people start pouring through your busted-in door. You're probably going to do what I'm going to do. I'm going to shoot them. I am going to shoot them. Now, here's where it gets messy, because I am going to assume, because one, I'm a good guy. I don't do, don't do drugs. I don't sell drugs. I'm no one that the police should logically have any interest in. Therefore, I assume that anybody who's breaking into my home and comes running through the door after they've broken it down is a bad guy. And I will act accordingly. I will respond to that. People say, well, what if they're wearing uniforms? Yeah, they're going to get shot too. You know what? It's going to be a sucky day for everybody concerned. They're going to get shot too. Well, why would you do that, Tom? Because the bad guys do that. I tell you what, do an internet search for home invasion, dressed as police or impersonating police. You will find a lot of cases like this. That puts us in a tough place. It also puts the police in a really bad place. And I would offer that if you are a police officer on a team that does dynamic entries, you might want to review, I'm sure you do, but you might want to again review your policies and your procedures to make doubly and triply sure that the place you're going is the right place. And yeah, it's one of those deals that there's probably not a good conclusion to a scenario like that. Probably isn't. I mean, if you know of one, I would love to know. If you have another way of treating this, or if you're a police officer and you've got another take on this, man, I would love to hear it, because I've been thinking about this one, thinking, I can't come up with a scenario that turns out well in this kind of situation. In this one, this guy was fortunate. The police did not shoot him. He didn't kill any police officers, and the police didn't charge him. They said, hey, you're doing what you had to do. Our number here is 866-TALK-GUN, or just dial me at Tom Talk Gun, looking for your range reports. Also, have you thought about that kind of situation, a home invasion like that? Is it a home invasion? Is it the police? Do you have time to wait and figure it out, or do you just take action? I'll be right back.
This is Jeff with Black Hills Ammunition. Our new rifle ammunition line, featuring Hornady's extreme low-drag bullet design, is a big step forward in long-distance performance. When you want the ability to shoot way out there with accuracy, flat trajectory, and minimal wind effect, our ELD ammunition is the right choice. The high ballistic coefficients and Black Hills Ammunition carry manufacture gives you the advantage. Black Hills Ammunition, the power of performance.
Are you looking for a place to shoot? The National Shooting Sports Foundation has a great website called wheretoshoot.org. It's the largest database of shooting ranges on the internet. It's also a great resource for shooters where you can find video tips, printable targets, and a lot more. Find it online at wheretoshoot.org. And while you're there, download their free iPhone app. That's wheretoshoot.org.
Perhaps more than any other landscape, wetlands embody the life-giving abundance that nature has to offer. And perhaps more than any other organization, Ducks Unlimited is working to ensure that our continent's wetlands not only survive, but thrive for generations well beyond this one. The time is now to band together. The time is now to rescue our wetlands.
It's the next generation target pistol, the SW22 Victory from Smith & Wesson. Stainless steel frame, interchangeable match barrel, thumb safety, fiber optic sights, and a Picatinny rail. The SW22 Victory is ready for anything, targets or small game. Also available with a threaded barrel or cryptic camo finish. And it's backed by the Smith & Wesson Lifetime Service Policy. Learn more about the SW22 Victory at smith-wesson.com.
All right, back with you. Let's go straight to the phones. Line 2, Dennis is with us out of Waco, Texas. He had something happen to him that I want to hear about. Hey, Dennis, what happened, man?
Hey, Tom. Well, fortunately, I wasn't home when this happened. An errant 911 call caused by a neighbor's cell phone caused the police to break into my home when I wasn't here. For obvious reasons, they were doing a welfare check. And that's fine and good. I have no qualms about that. But when I did discussed the matter with the local police chief. And by the way, this isn't Waco proper; it's a suburb.
Okay.
He wasn't quite feeling me on the same thing that you were talking about just a few minutes ago about criminals dressed up as police.
Oh, yeah?
It could have been very tragic. Long story short, I did have the opportunity to meet with a small-town mayor and this police chief, and we did iron it out. And he did apologize on behalf of the department and promised to review his policies and procedures.
What was he not? I mean, when you said, look, this could have gone badly. If I'd been at home, I would have shot whoever came in the door. I assume that's roughly what you said.
That's exactly what I said.
What was his reaction to that?
It was pretty brisk. It was kind of, he wasn't happy with a citizen telling him that because of...
because we're subjects, right?
That's just the gist of it right there. He was not happy with a citizen telling him, "Hey, I would have shot to defend my home, and even if your officers were in uniform, I would have done that." Is because, and I referenced to him all. If you do an internet search, just as you discussed a few minutes ago, it says you will see several news articles of criminals doing home invasions dressed as police, and I told him. In addition to that, I said, those high-powered rifles that I have, the AK, the shotgun, and so forth, I train with it every year. I do pay a tactical training course for civilians in this area every year. Every year I go.
Mm-hmm. Was he surprised at that?
He was a little bit surprised, but not much.
I mean, here's the thing. And I'd say, look, if the police need me, if they're coming, to talk to Tom Gresham, or if they even want to arrest Tom Gresham, all they have to do is knock on my door or call me on the phone in my house and say, hey, we are the local police. We are outside your door. We need you to walk outside. Cool. I'll do that. If they knock on the door and say, we need you to come outside now, cool. I'll do that. They don't have to kick in my door if they know they're actually coming for me. So I have to assume whoever is kicking in a door doesn't wish me any goodwill. They're there to do me harm. It's the only safe assumption, is anybody who kicks in my door is there to do me harm. And, there are, at some point I may share, there are things you can do that's really simple. It will cost you exactly $0 that can keep somebody from opening your door, which I got from the SWAT guy. Physically keeps the door from being opened. I may go into that at some point. I got to give that some thought whether I want to share that or not. But I'm so glad, Dennis, that you had that conversation with him. And then it's one of those deals you have to say, well, look, officer, if you're at home and somebody kicks in your door, what are you going to be doing?
Well, that's where the mayor came in. The mayor did see it, my perspective on that. He totally agreed. He said, you know what, I understand your perspective. He said, I would have done the same thing.
And the other thing is, I know there's a bit of a mindset of, well, we train and we've got the guns and we've got the body armor and all that. And when you turn around and say, well, look, you need to understand, I train and I have a semi-automatic rifle, and I don't know what you guys are wearing, and I certainly would never wish harm to any law enforcement officer at all, okay? But understand that probably what you're carrying is what I'm carrying. What you guys have is what I have. So we just need to get on the same page on this. I'm not trying to hurt anybody. The point of the conversation, Dennis, and the point you're making to them is, let's figure something out here so nobody gets hurt. Because that's the goal. Is we don't want anybody to get hurt in this foolishness.
And luckily we did, Tom. We did exactly that. We sat down for a 2-hour talk, and we ironed it out. There's some things that, like, for example, now their database now has accurate cell phone numbers for myself and my wife.
Okay.
So in the event that anything like that happens, they can say, hey, we better call before we decide to break into to that particular address.
That's
again.
a great idea. And, the other thing is, and it's another subject for another day, is the whole concept of swatting, which has become a real issue where somebody can spoof it, call 911, and it looks like it's coming from your house, and they're saying, hey, I just killed my wife, and I'm going to kill anybody who comes in. I'm holding these kids hostage. And all of a sudden the SWAT teams comes in, and then find out that you're sitting there watching TV, watching reruns of All in the Family or something when they break in the door. I mean, swatting's a real deal. Dennis, thank you so much. I want to scoot down to line 3. Miguel's with us out of Carson City, Nevada. Miguel's got a different perspective on this and I think it's going to help us out. Hello, sir. Welcome to Gun Talk.
Hello. Good. So I just wanted to say, if we look at this from a protector's point of view, being the law enforcement here for the people, if you have a registered gun, then they have a reason to approach the location in such a manner that's appropriate for whatever it is that they need to do to get the job done and clarified. Now, if your gun is not registered, then logically it makes sense. They don't know if you're going to be hostile or not, because if there's that type of search going to your residence, then there has to be a reason why it got to that level in the first place.
Well, what if they have the wrong house?
Well, if they have the wrong house, then that means communication is a weak link somewhere between the moment something was filed to the moment it reached the person who authorized.
Well, I understand all that, but my point is that's all happened, and they're kicking in the door now.
Right.
And the whole idea of a registered gun, there's no such thing as registered guns. Get over that. There's no requirement to register a gun in this country.
Perfect. So I agree with you then. Now, let's look at the situation.
All right. Appreciate it, Miguel. Let me run down to Andy on one. Andy in Texas, appreciate your call. Andy, I gather you are an attorney?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, I appreciate the topic, and my point is, I think in terms of policies that the police, might consider to minimize these instances in which they feel a need to bust into a house like this with a SWAT team, they need to make sure that they've done due diligence before they go in, and they need to carefully consider whether a stakeout might be more appropriate. People at some point will need to leave their house to get milk or get gas or go to work. And in those scenarios, when the individual is outside, it's a much safer scenario than it would be to break into a house. They can identify the individual that way. In many cases, just simply serving a warrant for, past due traffic tickets or failure to appear, obviously there's a level of importance. There needs to be an imminent threat that's verifiable before the police should consider one of these group entryways appropriate. And if you're, pointing out situations where the criminals are starting to think, hey, here's a good way to get people to just lay down their guns, there needs to be uniform and consistent action to deter that kind of behavior. And only when the police, I think it needs to be a nationwide effort if this sham that you're talking about that criminals are catching on to is becoming very common.
Yeah, and look, if you want to really get a police officer angry, you get somebody who's impersonating a police officer, man. That ticks them off about as much as anything I know, with good reason. But it now has become, what they've done is they put everybody in danger. They put the homeowners in danger. They put the police in danger with this whole impersonation deal. And, all you got to do, Andy, is just when you get a chance to get out of your car, do a little search, you'll find there have been a number of these cases of the home. The other thing that's happened is home invasions a lot of times now have gone from one person to 6 people doing home invasions. And it's one of the reasons that and look, thank you for your call. One of the reasons I've said people need to rethink their home defense guns. This also, of course, we're talking about, how do you know what's going on out there? Well, you know what? We go back to one of our great sponsors, the Blink cameras. You can turn on your camera out there, look at it with your phone. If somebody's pounding on the door, you go, oh, yeah, that's a bunch of police officers out there. That's the real deal. There's like 6 cop cars out there. Oh, okay. Or, no, that doesn't look right. Now, you may not have time to do all that because this stuff typically happens fast. It happens in the middle of the night. They want to do it while you're asleep as much as they can. If they can catch you in REM sleep, they're going to be in the house before anything happens, whether it's the good guys or the bad guys. If your doors, how many times have you heard me talk about, you do not open the door to find out who's on the other side of it. If you don't know who's on the other side, don't open the door. The corollary to that is how secure are your doors? I mean, if they're hollow core doors and there's not much of a lock on there, not much of a system, how hard is it to get in? Oh, one other thing. If you start doing as I do, every day I do, basically it's like a clip service, but you can do it with a Google Alerts system and find news stories that say home invasion. And you start reading a dozen of these a day, you get a sense after a year or two of what's going on. What's really interesting to me is how often home invasions are in the middle of the day. Because we always think, it's going to be like 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, no, not always. In fact, not even most of the time. You'll find that a lot of these break-ins are the middle of the day. And it's always weird. People say, well, I lock my doors at night. I'm going, really? How about just lock your doors whenever you're there? What does locking your door do? Time. It buys you time. If you had an additional 10 or 15 seconds, you could get to your gun. You could get, to safety. You could get to a safe place. You could go somewhere and lock a door. You could hunker your people together. Time. That's all a gun safe does for you. It buys you time. Anybody can get into a gun safe if they have enough time. But what it does is it says, well, this is going to be 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours before you can break in. They go, well, we'll go somewhere else. So you're thinking about, what are our levels? What are we going to be doing? Hey, we know what? We just got a new Supreme Court justice, and the question is, what's that going to mean for us for gun rights? There are a number of cases that are either headed toward or working their way toward the Supreme Court. When we come back, let's talk about what's liable to happen when it gets to the Supreme Court. Our number here, 866-TALK-GUN. I'm Tom Gresham.
Good morning, Mr. Gresham. Your mission, should you decide to accept it, is to host a radio show that will bring truth and common sense to the discussion of firearms rights in this country. Good luck, Tom, to you and your Tom Gresham's Gun Talk team.
All right, back with you. 866-TALK-GUN, or just dial Tom Talk Gun. That'll get you into the conversation here. One of the things a lot of us have been, frankly, honestly, smiling about for about a week now would be there is a Justice, Brett Kavanaugh, on the Supreme Court. The battle was contentious, mean, nasty, slimy, ugly, and probably ultimately helpful to the GOP and motivating an awful lot of people to vote who might have kind of slept through the midterms. By the way, 21 days from today. 21 days from today. If you're not voting, shame on you. Get off your rear and get in gear. Simple as that. So what is it going to mean to us that Brett Kavanaugh is on the Supreme Court? There are some cases that are headed toward the Supreme Court and some that probably will get there. Joining me to talk about that and kind of let's plot this out a little bit, Gene Hoffman from CalGuns. Hey, Gene, I don't know about you. I've been smiling for about a week now.
Absolutely, but I still want to see these cert petitions granted.
See what?
I want to see these cert petitions granted. I want to see the Supreme Court actually take up these cases.
Well, right? Exactly. So one of the things, I guess, just to cover it very quickly, when cases they request certiorari, cert, basically they ask the Supreme Court to accept them. It takes 4 votes to be accepted. Obviously, it takes 5 votes to win. In the past, on a lot of important Second Amendment cases have been turned down by the Supreme Court. They simply would not even accept them. We don't exactly know why, but the thinking is maybe internally they said, we're not going to have the 5 votes to win it, so let's not take it at this level and make it a precedent, a Supreme Court precedent. Let's just not even take the case. Run the math for us now. I mean, is it really 5-4, or are we now looking at a 4-4 plus Roberts as a swing that we still don't know what's going on with him?
I'm worried it may be the latter. The kind of internal conversation about how we counted to 5 was always a question of whether it was Kennedy or Roberts who was the person who, wasn't saying yes to these cases that had real interest. I mean, some of these cases that weren't granted had Thomas writing in dissent saying, we're treating the Second Amendment like a second-class right, and we should be taking these.
Right.
So, the first thing to see is whether or not we're dealing with the chief wanting to keep the court, out of certain political arenas. One of the potential negatives of this battle for the justice coming forward is that it may make the chief want to wait before he tackles another gun case.
Oh, I see. To let it settle down, to say, so people can't say, well, see, now this is what this was all about, was the Supreme Court, the Second Amendment and guns and all. And he says, look, let's just let it settle for a while.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I'll say it this way, I certainly hope that's not the case, but it is the risk. But on the flip side, we certainly now have 4 solid votes at all times for the Second Amendment.
Okay. All right. If you would, run through a few of the cases that either are, already been appealed to the Supreme Court or are headed that way logically. And, because there's some really important ones out there.
It's basically everything that matters. Right now, sitting in front of them is California's handgun roster, where they basically make it so you can't sell a new make or model of a semi-automatic firearm, semi-automatic handgun in California. That's sitting in front of them. Also, Case Mance out of Texas, where people from D.C. were trying to buy firearms from a Texas dealer like they could buy rifles. That was overturned 8-7 by the Fifth Circuit, so that's sitting in front of them. But the ones that are, I think, even more critical, you have magazine bans, both on the East Coast and here in California. Those cases are likely to get to the Supreme Court quickly because in California they've been preliminarily enjoined. The other things that are out there, in California, we kind of famously won and then had overturned en banc that the state had to let us carry in some way. That case was not granted cert, but then a follow-on case that was right behind it, Young versus Hawaii, the panel said, well, if you don't have the right to concealed carry, you certainly have the right to carry, so open carry must be legal in Hawaii. We expect that to be overturned en banc, but that's, again, putting carry squarely in front of the Supreme Court in short order.
I'd like to return to that first case because I'm not sure that people outside of California fully appreciate what the handgun roster is and how it has been corrupted. Now, for a gun to be able to be sold at a dealership in California, the state has to approve the specific model of the gun. It has to be submitted by the manufacturer and then put on the list of not unsafe guns, which I love that term. Right, not unsafe guns. So in other words, you can sell these guns, you can buy these guns. And then several years ago, they said, yes, and one of the things these guns are all going to have is microstamping, at which point the manufacturer said, yeah, except that it doesn't exist. We can't microstamp. So when a gun falls off the list, and anytime the manufacturer changes something in a gun, it falls off the list and it's required to be resubmitted. Except now you can't resubmit anything because nothing has microstamping. How'd I do?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I mean, and the way to make this very practical for everybody who's not in California, the Generation 4 Glock is illegal to sell in California.
Wow. Okay, so, and the list gets smaller and smaller because if a manufacturer says, well, we're going to change the safety on a gun, we're going to change something on it, we're going to upgrade it, we're going to make it better, except that now that new changed gun cannot be submitted and they're not making the other one anymore. So that basically is essentially not available. So the list just gets smaller and smaller. And I mean, eventually you get down to the perfect number for the gun banners, which is 0.
Well, it turns out that the Ninth Circuit said one's enough. So as long as you buy a single semi-automatic handgun, then you're good enough.
Wow. Okay. So that's going on there. We also have several cases where we have states or different circuits that are in disagreement about the law. Typically, that would be something that the Supreme Court would take, wouldn't it?
That's right. And, I mean, some of those are not yet fermented enough for them to be in front of them, but will be soon. So there have been a lot of new cases of exceptions to lifetime bans. Someone was put in a mental facility 35 years ago and has been fined since, right? Or, technically was charged with a misdemeanor that could be put in jail for 2 years, so that actually bars them, even though it's been 20 years and nothing's wrong. Those sorts of cases, I do think, are going to potentially get up to the Supreme Court because different circuits are kind of coming out in different places and different categories of people who are prohibited.
Hey, Gene, hold on a second. I want to take a break. When we come back, I want us to tackle this thing that's been popping up in several states now, which is suddenly limiting long gun sales to where now you have to be 21 or over. You can't be 18, 19, or 20. And states are taking that action. I'm wondering if that's going to be headed to the Supreme Court at some point. We're talking with Gene Hoffman from CalGuns and other groups who will be talking about that as well as how you can help out with what they're doing. Our number, 866-TALK-A-GUN. This is Gun Talk.
The Ruger pistol that started it all is now even better. The Ruger Mark IV has the same great look as the Mark III, but now its simple one-button takedown means less time taking apart your gun and more time shooting it. Disassemble it in seconds for no hassle cleaning. Learn more about the Target, Hunter, and 2245 Light Mark IV series models at Ruger.com. The Ruger Mark IV, another rugged, reliable firearm from Ruger.
Want great deals on guns, ammunition, and gear? Download the free Gundealio app today. With Gundealio, you can search for deals, listen to the Gun Talk podcast, watch gun videos, read gun news, and get notifications right to your phone about deals and special offers. Save money on the products you want from the companies you love. New deals, discounts, and rebates added daily. Gundealio, available for free in the App Store and Google Play.
For 36 years, the U.S. Sportsmen's Alliance has been fighting to protect hunting, fishing, and trapping for sportsmen from coast to coast. Today, we are under constant attack from extremist animal rights groups who want to end your ability to hunt in the U.S. Join us to protect our sporting heritage and our way of life outdoors. To join or for more information on how you can help, go to ussportsman.org. That's ussportsman.org.
Founded with the singular purpose of building fine sporting firearms, Kimber creates a handgun for every person and a rifle for every adventure. While embracing modern manufacturing techniques, every Kimber depends on practiced hands for assembly, fit, and finish. There's no compromise in features, materials, or performance. Synonymous with quality, precision, and excellence, and made in America. Kimber is what all guns should be. Visit KimberAmerica.com. That's KimberAmerica.com.
And we're back. We're talking with Gene Hoffman out of the state of California. Gene, I mentioned CalGuns, but there's another group out there that's really doing some great stuff, right?
That's right.
Who that is?
Second Amendment Foundation. Absolutely.
Yes. So I mentioned the age limit that's starting to be applied to long gun sales. 18, 19, 20-year-olds need not apply. Is that something that could or should be challenged in the courts and maybe end up headed toward the Supreme Court?
Well, the one data point we have on this is a little bit troubling, and that is the Fifth Circuit's of Texas, where you would think we would have relatively strong Second Amendment judges, when challenged the 18 to 21-year-old handgun ban, said that that was a legitimate kind of age restriction that fell within the legislative power, even under strict scrutiny. That said, they were looking at only a handgun ban, and there are all sorts of loopholes that, your parents can buy you one, those kinds of things, right?
Right.
The new bans we're talking about now are often complete and total bans, and that becomes a bit of a different animal because it's much harder for the government to justify that.
When you say a total ban, it's not just a ban on buying, it'd be a ban on owning then as well.
Well, it's certainly a ban on buying any firearm on your own. And the problem you get into is once you're 18, you can't force your parents to buy you a gun.
Right.
Right. So it's a problem, and it becomes a bigger problem in places where there's also transfer restrictions like California, because that means you can't even do a private party transaction.
Yes, that's true, because in California, even if I had a long gun and I wanted to give it to a 19-year-old, I couldn't do that because it would have to go through a dealer, and now it is transfer, so the law applies, and you can't do that.
That's right. And I believe Jerry Brown vetoed that here in California this most recent cycle. But
that's right.
Future Governor Gavin Newsom is likely to sign that thing. So
and Newsom is going to win, I take it.
Most likely, yes.
Yeah, and just give people just a sense, because you live with this all the time. Those of us out here, we kind of go, yeah, I've heard of this guy. Give people a sense of Gavin Newsom and guns and gun rights.
So Gavin Newsom decided the legislature wasn't anti-gun enough and put a proposition on the ballot to basically pass the last 5 years wish list of ratcheting, increasing gun control here. So now we have ammo registration, ammo background checks, further push to ban more semi-automatic rifles and so-called bullet button. This was Gavin's way of making sure he was politically relevant. So, here in California, since it's an all-Democrat state, and the Republicans don't even have a super minority, the game is to see who is furthest to the left on these issues. So it just continues to ratchet.
Has the state, this is kind of a weird question, has the state simply gone that far to where the people there don't see this as a problem?
It's a weird thing here. You have a very large number of classically Democratic gun owners, because California still is the largest single retail market in the U.S. for firearms with all these restrictions. So, I think it's not gotten to the point where these things intrude on the people who are rationally ignorant of what's going on around them. So, it's one of those, the frog doesn't really know he's boiling yet.
I'm just looking at a letter I got from a guy who says, hey, I'm a gun owner. They'll have to pry my guns from my cold dead hands. But this thing with semi-automatic rifles, we got to do something about that. You're going, what?
Yeah,
those two are inconsistent.
That's right. Well, look, people have very odd feelings about this, and it's often more emotional than it is rational. The good news for this, though, to come back to our original kind of point, almost every single case here in California that we haven't won and should have was based on the Ninth Circuit's kind of intermediate scrutiny dressed up as rational basis for everybody else. The government's not being put to, making the evidence for real. Okay. And a single Supreme Court case that discusses this basically wipes out all of the losses and allows us to go through the entire cycle again.
Really?
And, yeah. And the flip side, too, about the ratchet is a lot of these laws survive because they aren't that much of a burden. Well, as they continue to get more and more of a burden, it gets harder and harder to justify them.
Okay. Makes sense. So, and I know you have your fingers out there. You're talking to a lot of the key people, a lot of the civil rights lawyers who are working on Second Amendment stuff. What are they saying in terms of what's the game plan now that the Supreme Court has changed?
Well, I think, the answer is we want to get as many of these strong challenges in front of the Supreme Court and, in some ways try to bring them some of the challenges that I think are less radioactive. Magazine size bans. California's trying to seize legally owned 10-round magazines. So, that's the kind of level where the headlines, the Supreme Court does not look out of normal or out of touch by saying, of course, the state government can't take property from people that's protected by the Second Amendment.
Right. Okay. So basically, they're working on it now. They're looking at which are the ones that are most likely to go through to be successful. And they build their case and start building. It's like building blocks. They start and then keep building it up. Perfect.
Well, and we now have one of the key things in Kerry, which is it was an arguable whether Illinois' Kerry case was about concealed weapons or not. Mm-hmm. But it is very clear that the D.C. case, which D.C. was worried about appealing, is
right. Exactly. Hey, Gene, thank you so much. I appreciate it more than you know. Always a pleasure having you here. And we will get you back on soon because we're going to keep following this. All right, we're open lines for you now, 866-TALK-GUN. Range reports are welcome, as are, pretty much anything else. If it's on your mind, we have an open line for you. Just give me a call at Tom Talk Gun. All right, back with you. This is an email I get from a couple of friends of mine, Phil and Jason. Talking about, they're in Michigan Open Carry, it's a group there. They were doing an event, actually a little thing at an airport. And let me explain that airports, there are two different areas. There's the commercial terminal, where you fly out on the airlines, and then there's general aviation where private planes fly out. And depending on the state, I understand there's state-by-state difference, but under federal law, you are not prohibited from carrying a firearm in an airport until you get to the security checkpoint, the TSA checkpoint there. Now, you can't carry beyond that, but you can carry up to that point. You can walk through the terminal in most states. Some states, they have a state law, but not Michigan. So these guys are at the general aviation, not the commercial aviation side of things, and they're open carrying. And the airport manager comes out and asks them if they're law enforcement. And they said, no, we're not. He said, well, you guys can't conceal carry in the airport. He said, of course, they're open carrying anyway. And so Jason said, well, we told him that we could. He said, carrying is only prohibited in the sterile area in Michigan. He says, otherwise, publicly owned airports are actually statutorily preempted, which is cool. Anyway, he says, the airport manager said he's going to call the sheriff's office. So these guys said, okay. And they went out to their airplanes. They have little private airplanes and started fueling their airplanes and checking them. They're going to fly away. He said, as I was doing the pre-flight on the bird, he says, I noticed a deputy started walking out onto the ramp. He says, then I saw him talking with the airport manager for a few minutes. Then he came over. The deputy came over. The deputy says, yeah, we got the report, and I let the airport manager know that it's perfectly legal. So the deputy and the pilots had a conversation, and then the pilots got in their planes and flew away. That's the way it should happen. It's kind of an education deal there. Let's go to line 4 real quickly. Bruce is in North Carolina. Hey, Bruce, you're up. What'd you find?
I was just calling. I want to thank you for what you do, and I was just calling. There is a most intriguing new website on the Internet titled the Jerkburg Report, and it deals with this satirical spoof of the town of Jerkburg that's populated entirely by liberals, and if you get a chance to go there, and particularly if you download the thing, you'll find one of the most hilarious spoofs of the average liberal's view of gun ownership that you'll ever see. Anyway, I think you'll fall in love with it, and that's basically all I wanted to say is, Jerkburg sounds like the kind of place where liberals would live, doesn't it?
Well, it is certainly worth a look. I'm going to go take a look at it, and I appreciate the heads up on that, Bruce. I was listening, and I don't listen to a lot of talk radio, but I was listening the other day, and I heard an interesting description. They said, the difference between liberals and leftists, is basically liberals, as I remember, basically was they want the government to allow you to do, to do things that are basically leftist. Leftists want the government to force you into it. I thought it was an interesting difference. The leftists want the government to force you to get in there. So, yeah, Bruce, I appreciate that call. Fascinating stuff going on. Now, we have some new guns we're going to be talking about when we come back. Let's see. We have a new 1911. We have a new 22. And, oh, yes, we have a 10 millimeter that we have to talk about because I don't have quite enough time right now. When I come back, I'm going to give you that information. Also, we have, if you go to our website, guntalk.com, you go to find Gun Talk on YouTube or on our Facebook page, you'll see the videos we have of some of these guns. We've got that out. We were able to shoot those and have a ball with that. Lots of cool stuff, and there'll be even more coming out in the next week or so, and I'll be able to explain a little bit about that when we come back as well. Our number here is 866-TALK-GUN, or just dial me at Tom Talk Gun. When we come back, we're going to be talking about rifles and hand loading and what kind of guns work best for different things, and you'll be able to call in and talk to a real expert, not me, but somebody who actually knows what he's doing.